I'm Ann Abernethy, and this is Beyond Badass, How Fierce Women Get It Done. As a real estate broker here in Aspen, Colorado, I've had the good fortune to meet so many impressive and inspiring women, and I just thought their stories should be heard. The goal here is for all of us to learn together. Welcome to Beyond Badass, the podcast. I've got a great guest today. But before we get to that, if you're thinking about selling your house and you want to be really badass about it, where do you begin? How about right here? This is today's Fast Fix. Today's Fast Fix. Clear the clutter. Think about it. We all accumulate so much stuff in our homes. Here's my suggestion. Walk into every room of your house with your phone. Click, 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 click all the way around the room in a 360 in every room, including the bathrooms. You'll see how much clutter you've accumulated over time. Get rid of it. Take everything off the countertops. Then things like these remote controls that are everywhere, stick them in a drawer. And then the worst are these cords, because they're strung out to your computer to a plug. Stash them in a plastic bag and get rid of them. Put them in a drawer. That's all you need to do for showings. Hey gang, just one more thing before we end this fast fix. You spent a lot of time getting your house ready to show, right? It took a lot of work. Now, it's very important that you keep your house that way. You want to be the seller that the broker can call and say, I've got a buyer in the car. Can I come over in 5 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that? Have your house ready for showtime all the time. It'll make your life easier. And one last thing. If you don't do anything else before a showing, just make sure that you close the toilet lid seats. That's your fast fix for today. Welcome, everybody. This is Beyond Badass, How Fierce Women Get It Done. Okay, so first guest. I'm so excited about this. One of my dearest friends, Janet Fox, is our guest today. I don't even know where to begin on this resume. Look at this. It's 3 pages long. She's been all over the world. She's lobbied before Congress. I'm just going to read some of this because the only way I can do it is to read it because I have no idea what this means. Strong understanding of manufacturing and product development process across all types of industries from apparel to software to home goods. 2012 gained $135 million in gross margin for the first year implementing supplier business strategy for Under Armour, JCPenney's, Radio Shack. Decades of experience and a global executive. So let's welcome Janet Fox.
Well, thank you. That's a pretty impressive intro.
Pretty impressive resume. I'm not kidding. Look at all this, Janet. Who has this?
But today they would not like you to have a resume like that. They want you to get right to the point. So.
Well, this is to the point because you're all over the map. So the reason that Janet is booked, not only is she a dear, dear friend of mine, but I just don't know anyone who has traveled the globe as she has and navigated at the time that she did it in such a man's world. I mean, we're talking man's world. And then here comes this big-time, Big Ten, 2-time captain of the volleyball team at Penn State University, which is very serious, full scholarship program, amazing athlete, amazing to this minute. She only likes to do like 3 sports a day if she can. But Janet, you started right out of college, right?
Yeah.
And you were a leader on your volleyball team and loved doing that.
Well, yeah, I know. I'll tell you that probably shaped my entire career. Playing a sport at a Division I level, but even more so, I started in sports and athletics right before Title IX came into effect. So there really wasn't a lot of opportunities for scholarships or anything for women.
Right.
Out of high school, I was the first female athlete to get a scholarship to college, which was a big deal at the time. So then within 1 year, though, Title IX came in, and then everything changed. So it was a little more equal, but we still had to fight for everything. You know, we didn't even have team uniforms. We had to buy our own uniforms at Penn State University in 1978.
You've got to be kidding.
No, not only did we have to buy them, we had to wash them. We had to have someone sew the numbers on. We drove ourselves to the matches in a little van with 18 of us in there.
Oh.
Try that.
So that was just, I mean, it was the very beginning of women being recognized for athleticism.
It really was.
You were on the cutting edge, and you were captain of the team. And I love that you say that your job in college was, tell us about painting the numbers.
So my freshman year, my parents moved to Europe, so I really didn't have a home to go home to. And so I went to the athletic department, and they gave us an athletic department job. And the main job was go and paint the bleachers at Beaver Stadium, put stencils. They're benches. They're just, metal benches. So you stencil, and then you spray painted 106,000 seats in Beaver Stadium at Penn State.
All metal.
All metal. We got great suntans. I mean, it was an awesome suntan experience, but that's pretty much what I did. And that we stayed there for the summer so that we could train because we were getting a new coach. And then, you get a new coach, he doesn't know you, you don't know him. You have to prove yourself all over again. So, one of the themes of, from the start is you constantly, as an athlete, as a business leader, you constantly are having to prove yourself. Sometimes a little more in women than in men. We have to work a little bit harder, be a little bit faster, be a little bit smarter. But I would tell you that my 4 years at Penn State shaped my entire future.
Oh, I can tell. I mean, we watched the football game together the other night, and it was just so much fun. She's so into it. She does. We are Penn State. So, no doubt that set the trajectory of your life, and certainly must have given you confidence to go into corporate business. But still, women were not doing what you were doing at that time in companies like where you worked. And did you start at JCPenney?
Yeah, I started at JCPenney. I started in their management training program in a little store in Virginia. But you're right. I mean, there wasn't, in my management training class, I was the only female. And, the first store I went to, all the management was all male. And it was different. It was funny because JCPenney at the time was an $18 billion company. They had, I think, 2,700 stores, and majority of the population in the stores was women, just not in management.
Right.
So
the men were making the decisions for what women should be wearing or doing.
Well, wearing, doing, and how you executed things and everything like that. I mean, the marketing department was male, the advertising department was male, the senior management. We didn't have any women on the management team back then.
So how did you work your way up and get recognized, other than the fact that you're almost 6 feet tall and blonde and pretty at the time?
Well, I made a decision coming out of college. I wanted to use my degree. And I could have taken a path that a lot of my friends did was, you get married, you have kids, and you stay home. I made a decision that I wanted to use my degree, and I wanted to be successful at what I did. And so I just worked really, really hard. And, listen, when you start out as a trainee, you start out on a hourly rate. You have a salary, but they try not to abuse you. And we all used to abuse it because we would sign in late saying that we weren't there at 6 in the morning, and we'd sign out late saying we weren't there till 10. Just really, really worked hard, tried to learn everything I could from all of the guys that had a lot more experience. I mean, some of the people I worked with had 12, 13 years experience when I just came out of college. So, take the best of what some people had and then look at the things they didn't do right and then build on that. But I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I mean, I wanted to be the president of JCPenney. That was my goal one day. I wanted to be...
Well, you got pretty close.
Well, I did. And, obviously dynamics changed, the company changed, a lot of things changed. But to get the opportunity to go from the stores into the merchandise department, and then I found my passion, which was international business.
Well, and that's a story all its own. I mean, that's where we really get into here, because here you come... almost 6 feet tall, beautiful, in heels, right?
Probably 6'3".
Wearing heels, towering over a lot of people,
yes.
Any humans.
Yes.
Going to China?
Yeah.
What? Tell us about that.
Yeah,
wow.
China, well, when I first started going to Asia, didn't see a whole lot of American or Caucasian women in Asia at the time. And, when I went to China, China was still, you would have considered it a third world country. Any notion that they're third world today, it would just be a notion. But there was no major highways in China when I used to go. I mean, I can remember women on the side of the road with hand trowels building the highways. I'm not kidding you, hand trowels building the highways. And now in China, there's super highways everywhere. But yeah, I was probably one of the only females that I ever saw when I was over there that wasn't working in a factory. And it was tough at first because the Asian culture, women are a lot more differential. And, you know, I can remember I was running one of our offices in Korea, and the office manager wanted me to walk 10 paces behind him. Well, he worked for me.
Wow.
And he wanted me to walk 10 paces behind him because that's what they did in Korea.
And what did you do?
Well, that didn't work. Yeah. I told him to walk 10 paces behind me. But, you know, eventually you gain their respect, and I think that's the whole thing, is that I was able to lead by example. And, you know, they all knew that if I said something, I was going to do it. And I always used to say, guys, one thing you'll find out about me, there's nothing I've asked you guys to do that I wouldn't have done myself or haven't done myself.
Right.
And I always just say, the good news is I know what you do. The bad news is I know what you do. So, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of debate at times, but, you know, I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot because it was Korea, China, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam.
Pakistan, Pakistan.
Well, Pakistan, yeah, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, those are totally different. But, you know, you learn different cultures. And I have a profound respect for cultures. And, you know, we sit here in the United States, we see things on TV. It's not always the reality.
Right.
And having the opportunity to appreciate other cultures, probably the most important thing that I learned throughout my entire 32 years career at JCPenney, Under Armour, and some other places. But you really learn work ethic because there's different work ethics amongst all countries. We think we work hard here. You go to China, you want to see people that work hard.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and especially women. Because, you know, think about this. We're talking about badass women here. Badass women in China, those people had to be badasses to survive.
Just to stay alive.
Well, you know, they had the one-child policy in China
right.
for years, decades. And, you know, if you had a girl,
oof,
they either disappeared somewhere or they were sent out for adoption. So if you think about it today, and I met some very, very impressive women in China. In fact, I met with the Minister of Trade in China. Who would ever think that in a high cabinet position in China, there would be a woman heading that up?
Unbelievable.
So you see that, and you see the struggles and all the things like that, and all the opportunities that I had here. They had to fight twice as hard as I did.
What was that like, interfacing with her?
Oh.
Was she respectful to you?
Very respectful. When you go to those places, it's all set up, you know, by levels of who's the most important, sits at the head, and then goes out from there.
Right.
I was with my boss at the time, a male, and then I was with his boss, who was a female. So it was kind of interesting dynamic because the Minister of Trade talked to the women, didn't talk to the men.
Really?
Which I've never seen in all of my years of dealing with diplomatic circumstances. They're always deferential to the male. So she was very impressive. Her name was Madame Ma, and educated in the United States. I believe she was a Harvard-educated person.
Wow.
So she really wanted to understand what we wanted from her, how she could help us, when in reality, we were trying to help the Chinese.
Right.
There was an elimination of the U.S. quota system, and it was about to become kind of like a new frontier because quota always helped countries be able to import into the United States. Well, China had the most quota. They were going to eliminate the whole system in the United States. So she wanted to know how she could help us, and we're like, no, we're here to help you and understand what you need so we can go back to our government and, you know, make sure that our business relationships stay firm.
And you did that. That really,
I did do that.
That really pushed you into a completely different dimension, that diplomatic thing that you did. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was interesting. You know, when I first started in college, I was a political science major, so I thought I was going to go into politics. Thankfully not, given today.
Well, I don't know. It sounded to me like you kind of were in politics.
Well, you know what? I was in international trade, and one of the things that I worked on was trying to secure trade deals with our government and other governments so that we could have the free enterprise system that we have today. And I think that was the important thing. So I worked on trade bills for Haiti, especially, this is 20 years ago. There was no free trade agreements with Haiti. So there was a lot of, believe it or not, controversy for that, like trying to help a third world country. There was a lot of controversy. So I had to go up and testify before House Ways and Means on the benefits of a free trade agreement with Haiti. One that I'm most proud of didn't actually happen, never got passed, but it was what they call an opportunity zone in Pakistan.
Oh.
And the U.S. government wanted to put the opportunity zone up in the Taliban mountains of Pakistan, and we're like, okay, first of all, there are no factories there. The only people that live up there are terrorists, and nobody in their right mind is going to invest and put their money up there. But, one of the things we had to explain, and not only did I have to explain, I had to lobby Congress, I had to go to senators' offices. You had to explain to them that this was really an anti-terrorism bill. Because in Pakistan at the time, kids were strapping bombs on their back for $100 and blowing themselves up.
Ugh.
So what we were trying to say is, listen, if you create job, you create opportunity in these villages in Pakistan,
right.
The alternatives is they're not promoting, putting bombs on their backs and walking in. So it was very interesting. And again, at the time I was doing it, not a whole lot of women walking up to, the senators and knocking on their door and saying, hey, listen to me, I've got something to tell you.
Well, amazing that here we are 20 years later, and it's kind of back to the future, right?
Well, in some regards, yeah. I mean, just recently what happened in Afghanistan, it just goes to show you of when people are not given opportunity to compete, people aren't given the opportunity to achieve excellence, things happen that, you don't anticipate but are predictable.
Well, you kind of define the word excellence. I like this term, excellence is a verb.
Yeah.
Excellence is a verb, and you do that every day. I want to get to your experience. You've got an experience on Capitol Hill.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
This kind of defines the time, wouldn't you say?
It does define the time, and this was actually in early 2000, and so I was lobbying Senator Lindsey Graham, so I went to his office, and I had our lawyers with us, there was lobbyists, and the difference between lobbying as a lobbyist and lobbying as a business person is they tend to listen to you more, because you go in and say, hey, I employ this many people in your state, we generate this amount of tax revenue, so they tend to want to listen to you more. So, it was business, so it was free enterprise. So we went to Lindsey Graham's office, and he came out of his office into his little antechamber, and he had a little couch sitting over there, as I call a settee. And he walks out, and Lindsey Graham, I don't know if you've seen him, but he's probably about all of 5'2". So I stand up. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him, and the first thing out of his mouth is, puts his hand on his couch and goes, sit down right here, little missy. I went one of these things like, here I am, I'm representing a Fortune 500 company. I'm here to talk about serious business, and this guy blows me off like I'm some school kid.
Wow.
And then proceeded to not listen to a word I said.
Well, wait, go back, because I know you really well, and you take no prisoners. I just can't believe how disciplined you were to just keep your mouth shut. What did you say?
Well, first of all, I didn't sit. I decided that right then and there the meeting would be standing up, and I proceeded to talk to him about the opportunities to help the people of Pakistan and to really help the United States with a national security bill. And he proceeded to tell me that this was nothing more than a retail bill, and what was he going to tell the people of his state? Now, if you know history of the apparel industry, South Carolina used to be really big in the apparel industry, right. Not only in manufacturing, but in the textile mills. So I looked at him and I said, excuse me, sir, the textile industry left your state years ago, and it's not coming back. I said, your failure to innovate has caused that business to move to Asia. And he just kind of looked at there like, how dare you talk that way to me? And I said, I will defer to you, but you're wrong.
Wow.
So yeah,
that took guts.
That meeting didn't go as planned. I had to move on to next. I had to go see Senator Cornyn after that in Texas. So it's like, he'll help.
Wow.
Unfortunately, that trade deal never happened because then the war escalated and all sorts of things happened, and new administrations, things aren't as important to them. So, but yeah, it definitely shaped me. It definitely shaped my political views that day.
I'll bet. So when you've woven all this stuff through all this career, and you wanted to be president of JCPenney, which was very much should I say it, an old boys network?
Oh, definitely was a good old boy network.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And there you were, but you ended up at, what was your title when you left? Or when
I was senior vice president of sourcing, so I ran a $9 billion FOB business.
What is FOB?
That's first cost. So, in retail, it's what you pay for it versus the markup you sell it to the customer at.
Okay.
So we had a private brand business that was a $9 billion business at the time. We had 17 offices around the world, worked with...
That's all?
We had quite a few. You had to keep moving. I mean, production, like I said, the apparel industry especially, you had to follow the economic ladder of success, because in the apparel industry, it usually starts out in a third world country and lower priced labor where you have lots of people. So, it started in Europe, it started in England, then it moved to the east coast of the United States, then it moved to the south, then it moved to Japan, Taiwan, Korea. So you kept moving around, so you had to have offices.
And those things took you there.
Those things took me, and I had the best experience of my life. I would never have had that opportunity. But it took perseverance, because there was a lot of times, as you said before, women weren't widely accepted in the business world, and especially in Asia. And then you go to a Muslim country, and it's totally different.
Right. So how did you study the culture before you got there to know what to do and what not to do so you don't offend somebody?
Well, I was fortunate in that, we did have offices in these places, but cultural sensitivity, I think, just starts with how you're brought up. I was brought up, you treat people as you want to be treated, kind of the golden rule and whatnot. So I didn't necessarily, no one taught me. I think it was just learned experience. And, I understood. I mean, I love history, I love politics, so I'd done a lot of reading on all these different places. And the one thing I really learned that how international trade is so intertwined with history and politics.
Right.
And so if you understood what was going on in your country versus what was going on in those countries, it kind of made it a lot easier. But again, I really learned cultural sensitivity from just how I was brought up.
So you just stayed on top of it all the time anyway. You paid really close attention.
Well, yes. And if you're going to travel internationally, you better know what's going on the place where you're going to land.
You think?
Yeah, because you may not get back out.
Well, and you were sick in some places.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting, and you do get to see the medical systems other places. That's why we always would come back to the United States, and I said, this is the best place on the face of the earth. If you've never left, you don't know.
Right.
And when you leave, you really know.
Well, when you leave and go to places like that, for sure. This is not fancy places in Europe.
No, I wasn't going to Paris or Barcelona or Cannes or anything like that. No, I was going to, Bangladesh, Haiti.
So, as you went through this, let's talk about you for a minute. Were there times when you thought, oh, this is just not going to work. I just can't do this. This is too hard. I just can't keep going here.
No, not really. I loved what I did. I loved the experience. I built great teams overseas. I had over 450 people that reported to me. And so you become very intertwined in their lives and helping them. We take for granted. I mean, obviously we're living in a Zoom world today, but we take for granted. We get in our car, we drive to our office, everything works, takes us 10 minutes. I had people in India 3 hours to get to the office every morning.
Oh, my.
They had no running water in their home. They would take buses and trains to get there. So you see that, we talk about my perseverance. My perseverance was nothing compared to the people that I had the opportunity to employ. and make a difference in their lives. And that was probably the most gratifying part of the job. I mean, it's really nice to be able to help your own people in your own country, but to see what other people, and we take so for granted, I think that is probably why I always kept going. Because part of it was maybe selfish on my part, because I always felt, what's going to happen to these people if I'm not here to help them?
Wow. Wow. That is a lot to take on.
Well, but in fact, I was their beacon into the United States. They really didn't know anybody else. I was the boss, and to them, the boss is everything.
Right.
You know, I hopefully didn't act like the boss, but you know, I guess that womanly, nurturing type part of my personality came out. Part I didn't even know I had, by the way, because I have no children. I mean, I never, you know, I was career driven. My whole life was on to the next job.
Well, you now have 3 little big labs that are essentially your children.
That's true.
And I know that you have that side of you, that nurturing side in you, and it doesn't surprise me at all. You're very, very generous. It doesn't surprise me at all that you would take on and see your opportunity to make a difference in their lives. I mean, I can see how that would really propel you to keep going and to pursue all of that at the expense that others might say, well, you don't have a family or you're not doing that. But that's a big payoff.
It was a big payoff. And, you know, think about the last 20 years, lots of natural disasters in a lot of these countries we worked in. Pakistan had monumental floods, wiped out hundreds of homes. And, you know, my husband now and I sponsored a village in Pakistan. You know, for $800, I could build a 5-bedroom home.
Oh, my goodness.
In Pakistan. So we built 60 of them right after the floods. Because you see what happens, and you see when governments can't help, what can you do?
Right.
So because we had done so much business, you know, listen, if you're going to take from a country, you need to give back.
That's
and
a great attitude.
We just looked at it as, you know, we've done so much business here, we've helped a lot of people, but they've helped us. You know, they made us very profitable at JCPenney.
Right.
So, you know, we did that, and then even my husband took it a step further than I did, and he sponsored orphanages, girls' orphanages in India and Bangladesh, which again, in those countries, girls are treated like second and third class citizens.
Well, we have to say that you and your husband Peter McGrath, worked together for a long time and never had a romantic relationship. Oh, we got to talk about that.
I don't know. That's kind of stuff for People magazine.
Well, it's pretty good though. It's a good story. Because what was his job at the time when you worked for him?
Well, he was the executive vice president at JCPenney, and so, you know, one of the things I always admired was the same thing. He just worked really, really hard, and he gave a lot of opportunities. You know, like I said, Penny's was kind of a closed society back in those days. Mm-hmm. We, you know, wore our suits and ties to work every day. Women had to wear pantyhose. You know, you couldn't have open-toe shoes. And we had very few minorities. We weren't a very diverse company. And then he headed up product development and started to bring in a diverse population of people, straight people, gay people, black people. I mean, guys couldn't even have facial hair at that company back in those days.
Wow.
So, you know, he brought diversity into the JCPenney company, and he really took great pride in saying that 75% of his department were women.
And but you weren't dating then. You got together late, right?
Well, much later.
Much later. I mean, you had left the company.
He had retired.
Yeah. And then, so fast forward, you did the whole JCPenney thing, but then, how long were you there?
32 years.
Incredible. And you said also, I'm jumping around here, but I've got it because I don't want to forget this question. You said you were always the first to work.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's just you know, I would wake up at 4, get to the gym by 5, be at my desk by 6:30, and then I would stay till 8 or 9 at night, because one of the reasons I'd get there early is because Asia and the other countries, they were still working. Right. So I could talk to the teams and things like that over there. But, you know, I just felt that, you know, you could get a lot more done before the rest of the people showed up and started chit-chatting and, you know, interfering with not doing anything.
Would you suggest that to a younger generation who's coming up in business now? Tell me the things that you would say to, if you had a daughter or someone came to you and said, tell me how to do this, Janet. I'm starting out in business. I've got all the credentials that you had, educated, ready to go. Tell them what to do.
Well, I think the first thing is you have to have a passion for what you're going to do, because passion leads to hard work. Right? And if you don't have a passion, if it's just a job, I mean, there's a difference between having a job and a career.
Right.
If you want a job, go to Walmart, go to McDonald's and get a job. You can do that. If you want a career, then you have to invest in your career. It's not going to be handed to you on a golden, platter. One of the things I always would tell anybody, male or female in business, is get a mentor. And I said, and not just one. And don't ever think that anybody has your best interest in mind.
Oh.
Right? Even a mentor. Don't ever think that you have to go out and pursue what you want. Right? And you get as much input from people that you admire. I mean, I had 4 or 5 different mentors at Penny's. I've had mentors since I left Penny's. And, I always said, take the ball out of their hands. You got to tell people what you want. Don't expect them to know what you want.
And they can't read your mind.
They can't read your mind, and so often people just take whatever the path that their company takes them on.
Right.
Oh, okay, you're going to be a buyer. Well, I don't want to be a buyer.
Did you do that? Did you have those conversations?
Yes,
to go in and
without a doubt. And by the way, not well received, because there was a pathway you took to get from point X to point Y. But you know what? I didn't want to take that path.
Right.
And so, everybody else would, be the good little girl and, okay, I'll take the next step. But I didn't want to. I knew I loved international business. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go and be a buyer. And I told them, I don't want to be a buyer.
And so what did they say back?
Well, basically they first try to tell you that you're going to stunt your career and that you could really hurt yourself because you need to have this well-rounded background and whatnot. There's nothing wrong with being a specialist.
Right.
If you're a specialist and you really want to do that and you're really good at that, then be a specialist. I didn't want to be picking out clothes. I wanted to be negotiating the deals.
Right. Oh, big difference.
Big difference.
Big. Then you're playing in the big leagues.
Well, yeah, and as I said, I got my joy and excitement out of helping the other people in other countries as well as our own, but also is making the deal, like making a profit for my company. That was bottom line. You got to make money to stay in business, right?
Right.
So the more I could make, the better it was, and I just loved making deals. I mean, I am a deal maker.
What about to other younger women? What do you see now coming up? This, the millennial generation is such a huge population, and they're coming up. And what do you see or are there any differences in attitude going into jobs?
Well, I would say the biggest difference is instant gratification. I was 17 years before I got into a senior management position at JCPenney. Now, again, kids today, a lot of people today, 17 years, they wouldn't stay with the same company.
No.
So that was a little bit different. I mean, this generation, they hop around jobs. But one of the things is you can't walk in the door and expect tomorrow you're going to be the president of the company. And you have to work hard, and you have to differentiate yourself from others. Because there's, every year, there's a lot of people competing for your job.
Sure.
So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you rise above the other people? How do you get noticed in a field of...
How do you?
Well, again, the way I did it, well, it helped being tall, but no, I'm kidding. I actually did the extra work. I worked very hard. I'd come in early. I'd leave late. I'd do research. Think about it. When I started, that was before the internet. So you really had to go out and do your homework on different countries and different pricing indexes, the cost of raw materials here, what the shipping lines were doing there. It's a whole different environment, but I had to do that so that I could differentiate myself from my peers who were just taking, whatever they saw on a piece of paper in front of them. I just went out and did the research and did the work. And, you have to put in the work. If you put in the work, you can succeed. And again, the young people today, everybody wants it like yesterday. They're used to clicking and, oh, look. It doesn't work that way in the business world. even today, I work for a company today. We have a lot of young people, and I look at how hard they're working. And it's, company culture is really important. And, culture is a word, but it also comes from the people within. So, if you can teach these young kids today that hard work does matter. You do get ahead with hard work. Going the extra mile does help. I mean, that's how I differentiated. I just kept doing extra. I'd see the guys going home at 5, I'd go home at 8.
Wow.
So, some of it's just so obvious. But
maybe not.
Well, but you also have to have it in your heart and in your head.
Well, that's your athletic heart.
Well, it's competitive. I'm not going to lose.
Right.
So
I know that.
I'm not going to lose to you, or you. So, even if there's 3 guys and it's me for a job, I'm not going to lose.
Tell us about what you're doing now.
Well, now I work for a company that's an alternative tobacco company. It's called Turning Point Brands, and we produce vape products, CBD. We also have started into the THC business. The Zigzag rolling paper brand is ours. I mean, it's a lot of different stuff, but it's things for personal enjoyment of products. And during COVID, it was a very successful business because people were stuck at home and
they were using it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're using our products,
but this is still an international job for you.
It is, because most of those products, especially any of the devices, all are those made in China. And then we're also working with the FDA because the products we produce have now become regulated by the FDA. So we're going through that process, and it's just like, if you could consider what a drug has to go through to get approval from the FDA, that's the exact same thing we're going through right now.
And that's your job for them. You're actually leading them through the FDA process,
yes.
And it's a very expensive one.
It's expensive
and uncertain.
And very uncertain, and there's no guarantee that we're going to get accepted and all those kind of things, so it's a little stressful.
So are you enjoying being with all these young people that are working for you? That are they tech people? Are they men? Are they women? Or
mostly men, believe it or not. I mean, the vape industry is probably heavily male-dominated, and the users are male-dominated, but we have a lot of young people, and you know what? It's been nice because they want to learn, and they look at me not as the old lady. They look at me as somebody with a lot of experience, and luckily I still have a lot of energy.
Right.
And I think these young people keep giving me the energy.
Well, of course.
That's important to me, and that's probably why I hang out with younger people all the time, just so I can keep current and have a lot of fun with them.
Well, I think it's important for all of us, for anybody at any. I mean, as we grow older, staying current is one of the biggest goals for me. I think it's really important. Let's talk about some really quick things. Just your first impression. I want you to describe for me your most perfect day now. My most perfect day, taking the dogs out on a 5-mile hike. Yeah. Coming home. Taking myself on another nice hike. I'll tell you what, just being in Colorado, I mean, this is like God's country. Isn't it? And it is a perfect day every day, whether it's winter, spring, summer, or fall. Well, I know. And you had, I can't even believe we didn't talk about this yet, but real quickly, Janet had a very bad accident. It's almost a year and a half ago now, where it was not her fault, but she and her husband were walking across the street to dinner and got hit by a truck, physically hit by a truck. Janet was thrown over the hood of the car, landed in the middle of the street. That was a moment that changed a lot of things for you instantly, right? Yeah, it sure did. I mean, I broke, both my legs, my pelvis in 2 places, tore my rotator cuff. And it was the first time in my life that I'd ever really had any type of adversity in regards to physical adversity. So it changes your priorities a little bit. You think? Yeah, it changes your priorities a little bit. But, listen, I made a commitment to myself, and I said, listen, I'm going to work extra hard to get back to where I was. I mean, I was hiking Mount Kilimanjaro before that accident. I know that. So... I was lucky. Could have been a lot worse. But do you think that all your discipline and you've always trained, you've always worked out, you've always done it. Do you think that mentally got you through that? Because this was tough.
Yeah,
it was painful.
It was painful, and it was, it was scary. I mean, obviously, I wasn't even sure I was going to walk. But yeah, it's definitely, listen, again, that competitiveness comes out in all forms with me. So whether it's, trying to walk again, trying to be able to throw a ball again because I couldn't lift my shoulder. So all of that, again, from the time I started my life, I've always wanted to succeed. So this I just looked at as another bump in the road of, okay, here's an obstacle. How am I going to get better? It took a long time, but, I'm pretty much back to
almost normal.
Almost normal.
Not quite. You got some stuff ahead of you.
Well, there are some things ahead of me, but, obviously mental state helps a lot with a lot of these injuries. If you believe you can, you can.
Well, that's for sure. So what's your guilty pleasure?
I'll be honest with you, my guilty pleasure is being in the outdoors here. I mean, if I can sneak out and take a hike somewhere in the mountains, that's my guilty pleasure. I mean, it's just so liberating. It's free, your freedom. You can think about anything. You don't have to think about work. You don't have to think about family. You just think about the next hill you're going to climb.
Well, and you've certainly climbed a lot of hills, metaphorically speaking, and will continue to do that as you continue to get better from your physical injuries, which it's remarkable because I saw you. I was with you a lot during this process. I saw this horrific thing that happened, and for Peter too, your husband, he was injured as well, not as to the extent that you were, but knowing you and knowing how competitive you are, I thought, she will be fine. I know she will be fine, but it was not easy to watch.
No.
So, what is the one thing that you would just never cancel, like it's built into your schedule and you just are never going to give that up?
Probably working out, taking care of my body. I have to be at the gym or on a mountain every single day. I mean, that's just it. And it gets the endorphins going, but that is definitely it. I mean, you know better than anybody. I get up at 5 every morning. I go to the gym by 5:30. I come back. I take the dogs on a hike. But I just feel that that's just the best way to start the day. Then, get to your desk and start your Zoom meetings.
But you did that when you're at Penny's even.
I've done it my whole life.
Okay.
I've done it my whole life. I look at it as like my 401k plan for my health.
Well, you know what? I think you have to put something in to get something back.
Without a doubt.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
What's your definition of luxury? You're building a very nice house now.
I know. We are. That is luxury. I mean, I tell you what, and as you know, I mean, we just bought a 38.
I actually know that you bought a property.
Yeah, you actually found it for us and had to work really hard to get us to decide that was the right place for us. But yeah, that will be luxury once the headache of getting through all the permitting and everything like that. But, honestly, luxury for me is downtime. Luxury is sitting in front of the TV, just with family, doing nothing. Because I'm really not good at it.
You're terrible at it. You're not just
I'm not good at it.
You're terrible at it. I'd say to you, stop.
I know.
Just stop. And the other thing is eating.
Yeah.
You got to eat. Every now and then you got to just stop and feed yourself.
Well,
right?
that's true. Feed the mind, feed the soul.
Well, I think, do you have a favorite quote?
Yes, I do. But I forget it right this second.
Oh, come on, Janet. I'm serious. That's okay. I figured you'd have somebody from one of those coaches or something.
I did. It's a Joe Paterno quote, and I think it was, if you work hard, right? One of the things and Joe Paterno was my idol, by the way.
Tell him who Joe Paterno was.
Joe Paterno was the most winning coach in the history of college football. He's the coach at Penn State, the men's football team. And funny that I would think that guy was an inspiration, but he was, because he wasn't just a builder of men. He was a builder and a developer of young women. And I got the opportunity to meet him when I was in college because he was our athletic director for a couple years. And, one of the things he always said about, hard work, and that's probably, again, where I get this thing is with hard work, excellence can become a reality. And that is something that has stuck with me, probably why I'm driven the way I am. But, one of his best quotes. Again, with hard work, excellence can become a reality.
Well, like I say, excellence is a verb.
That's right.
It is a verb. It's something we do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't thank you enough. This is just, as well as I'm going to get teary here, as well as I know you, to hear the detail, though, of you talking about what you've done. You so own it, and you've been so successful doing it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a definition of beyond badass. She is the fierce woman who's gotten it done in the last 32, 3, 4 years.
Way too many. It's time to retire.
Thank you, Janet Fox.
Thank you, Ann.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and also that little bell icon next to it. That way you'll get notifications when a new episode drops. And I'd love it if you'd follow me at Inside Aspen on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and then the website's InsideAspen.com. I'm Ann Abernethy. See you next time.